The first Filipino settlement. In our class on History of Louisiana, we dug into the past and learned that Louisiana was inhabited by Native Americans, and we learned that there were different tribes of Native Americans when European explorers arrived in the 17th century and before the French discovered and claimed the Louisiana. We also learned that most of Africans was brought from Saint Domingue, which is now called Haiti, to Louisiana to enslave them. Then we get Canadian and French migrated during the French colony, the Spaniards during the Spain colony, and more immigrants from 1500 to 1800s. The state of Louisiana, just like the other state, is made up of different immigrants from different countries. But have you heard of the Filipino man that is from the Philippines that came here in Louisiana on late 1700? What makes these Filipinos migrate to the United States? Well, on 1564, the Spain colonized Philippines for 333 years. From there, the Filipinos has been under the Spaniards' tyranny and cruelty. The Filipino sailors and indentured servants that is forced to work in a Spanish vessel seek for opportunities and to run away from harsh treatment of the Spanish. So they escape the Spanish Manila galleon trade by jump off the ship when shipping routes travel from the Philippines to New Orleans before embarking to Spain or to Mexico. The galleons were large sailing ships that used for carrying products such as Chinese silk and Indian spice to Acapulco, Mexico, returning with Mexican and Peruvian silver and gold. These Filipinos were later known in the history as the Manila Men, named after the capital city of the Philippines, Manila. Some historians like Marina Espina and Larry Bartlett claim that Filipinos community existed in 1763 in St. Malo, Louisiana, but there are no concrete documents on when exactly the Manila men got here. But the year 1763 was recognized in the 2009 House Congressional Record as the date the first permanent Filipino settlement in the United States. It was part of the resolution that officially designated October as Filipino American History Month in the United States. However, the oldest known Filipino settlement dates back when Lafcadio Hearn, an Irish Greek writer who wrote about his journey to the remote village of St. Malo on his article for Harper's Weekly magazine published on March 31, 1883. Hearn wrote extensively about the fishermen or what they called the Manila men and described where they live, cuisines, their physical feature, traits, and behavior. According to Hearn, St. Malo existed for at least 50 years. It was the first permanent settlement of Filipinos and only composed of all men, with Spanish and Tagalog was their primary language. He described the fishing village that existed along the shore of Lake Bourne in St. Bernard Parish as a thriving community that lived in the small stilted houses made from wood and palmetto fronds in the murky waters of the Louisiana Bayou. Their windows must be closed with wire netting to protect from mosquitoes and other stinging insects. Vast spiders with their webs everywhere. There is sandflies, fleas, and woodworms and wood ticks. There's chicken bitten by crabs, pigs missing, carried off by alligators, and snakes that attack wildcats. There is marvelous variety of creatures in the swamp like reptiles, insects, and birds, but no deer or bear. According to Hearn, they don't have bed, tables, or chairs, and these fishermen slept at night among barrels of flowers. Hearn also described the feature of the Filipino men as cinnamon-colored and some are glossily yellow or bronze. He said, the features are irregular. Some have the very prominent cheekbones. The hair is intensely black and straight, but some is curly and browner. None of them are tall, and their hands and feet were small. There is no woman and liquor in the settlement, and all men were Catholic. Charles Whitney is an artist who accompanied Hearn and provided the sketches of St. Malo and Manila Village. St. Malo is a swampy, mosquito-infested wetlands on the shore of Lake Bourne. It is not the most hospitable places to live. According to Dr. Randy Gonzalez, they were referred as pioneer because no one wanted to live all the way out there and fish on those areas. Dr. Randy Gonzalez is an associate professor of English at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. He teaches professional writing and Asian American studies. He wrote an article in a page, Folk Life in Louisiana, titled Stories Told about the 19th Century Filipino Settlement at St. Malo, Louisiana. Also, according to oral historian, the Manila men were recruited by local pirate John Lafitte to join his group called Baratarians during the Battle of New Orleans in 1815 to help Andrew Jackson's forces defeat the British. In fact, on Sixto Lopez's article in Springfield Republican published on December 6, 1903, he wrote that one named Augustine Feliciano fought with John Lafitte. Sixto Lopez was part of the diplomatic delegation sent to the United States in September 1898 to gain recognition of the independent fledgling Philippine Republic. During his stay, he toured all over the country, including Louisiana, and met these people called Manila men and interviewed them. St. Malo soon established a successful fishing village. Its economy was based on fish trade and sun-drying of shrimp and fish. The camp had 14 buildings, and its population depends with the shrimp season. Since there were no refrigeration, they dried the shrimp to preserve them. The shrimps are boiled in a huge pot, then dumped on open platforms to dry in the sun. They use tarpaulins at night and during rains. When it is totally dry, fishermen would bring shrimp to the processors at places like St. Malo and Manila Village. They then remove the shells by walking over the shrimp, known as the shrimp dance, accompanied by drums. Most seamen practiced their trade at St. Malo, a fishing and shipping community in St. Bernard Parish, and later in Manila Village, a Filipino settlement in Jefferson Parish that became the center of the shrimp drying industry in the region in the 1890s. There is another account about the existence of a Filipino that was recorded on Hearn letters from 1879, where he mentioned of a Filipino owning a restaurant in an end part of an old Creole house on Dumaine Street, where he asked the Filipino owner of how long he kept the restaurant, and then he answered 7 years. Hearn was impressed with the cooking and how the bills is printed in half Spanish and half English. Filipino sailors settled in two main places, first in St. Malo in what is now St. Bernard Parish, and second the Manila Village in present-day Jefferson Parish. These Filipinos were not able to acquire citizenship until after the 1803 Louisiana Purchase. The Naturalization Act of 1970 said the country's naturalization was only applied to white immigrants. The historical village St. Malo was destroyed by a Category 4 hurricane in 1915, and Manila Village in Barataria Bay was also destroyed permanently by Hurricane Betsy in 1965. While the earlier hurricanes washed away the fishing villages, it was Hurricane Katrina in 2005 that blew away and destroyed most of the research and artifacts relating to the Manila village in St. Malo, including the recordings of Ronda Rishu's grandparents. Ronda Rishu is a sixth-generation descendant of Felipe Madriaga, who was one of Filipino seamen that married an Irish woman named Bridget Nugent in 1846. They have three daughters, and Madriaga name did not pass on. Rishu grew up with her grandmother, one of the last people that know Felipe Madriaga. To keep the history of St. Malo and Manila Village alive, the Philippines Louisiana Historical Society or PLHS has erected a historical marker at the Los Isleños Museum Complex in St. Bernard Parish in 2019 for St. Malo and year 2012 for Manila Village. Randy Gonzalez said it made sense to connect the two cultures as they not only live side by side but have the same colonial roots. Every day, there are things that we might take for granted. such as raised houses over the bayous or dried shrimps in Creole recipes, began with the foundation of Filipinos immigrants almost 200 years ago here in Louisiana. Filipino American National History Month was celebrated across the USA in October with various events testifying to the significance of the Filipinos' contribution to American society. Today, there are few ways to experience Filipino culture in New Orleans, including an event on October 8 at Xavier University in recognition of Filipino American Heritage Month.
Tierra dorada, hija del sol de oriente, su fuego ardiente en ti latiendo está. Tierra de amores, del heroísmo cuna, los invasores no te hollarán jamás. En tu azul cielo, en tus auras, en tus montes y en tu mar, esplendidate el poema de tu amada libertad. Tu pabellón que en las tines la victoria iluminó, no verán nunca apagados sus estrellas y su sol. Tierra de dichas, de sol y amores, en tu regazo dulces vivir. Es una gloria para tus hijos cuando te ofenden por ti morir.
Land of the morning, child of the sun returning, with fervor burning, thee do our souls adore. Land dear and holy, cradle of noble heroes, ne'er shall invaders trample thy sacred shores. Ever within the skies and through the clouds and all the hills and seas, do we behold the ravens, feel the throb of glorious liberty. Thy banner dear to all our hearts, its sun and stars alike. Oh, never shall its shining fields redeem my tyrant's might. Beautiful land of love, oh land of light, in thy embrace this rapture to lie. But it is glory ever when thou art grown, for as thy sons to suffer and die.
Sa